love in its real essence, put into action, will never forget the foundation of beingness.
Figure this out. I've got to take all this on.
So we need to come from a position of power and strength.
All black people are free at the same time, or nobody is free.
Get people to believe in the myth, to buy into that myth.
Inspire you or inspirit you.
That's what it is, regardless of what you believe.
And so if we think of a huge pyramid, at the top portion of the pyramid is our super consciousness.
Africa have become and is becoming. Ashe.
It's the nature of the African. The African is spirit.
What and who you attracted subconsciously can now be vigorously pursued.
Hail Jehuti, architect of truth. Give me words and power that I may envision the course of events of my life that I must follow.
60 degrees of knowledge, all in nothing. When intersected, the alpha becomes the omega.
Quickly, that days can be posed against night.
Founded Liberia with the intention of Christianizing and westernizing their heathen brothers.
There are many religions and many groups of people, and we cannot find ourselves through someone else's path.
Y'all gonna have to get this together. I'm gonna say some of us lost some melanin.
Free your mind so your bad black ass will follow.
Come together, whether you be Islamic, whether you be Christian, whether you be of Rastafarian, whether you be Hindu, whatever you may be, we all believe and understand, for our people have said, never said there is not a God.
Upon him said, I come not to bring a new religion, but to restore that which was given in the beginning at creation.
The hallmark of African civilization is a high moral standard.
If we look, and if we are consciously looking, we can take anywhere we are, extract, understand it, and utilize it to help our children.
We have a cultural issue before us.
Census. It is about to embark on the process of transformation.
Tell yourselves, African people, transversing eternity, walking among gods, like shuttles flying across the loom through the threads of time.
I will leave you to read a little more about Charles Finch so that we can give maximum time to what he has to say to us. He was the co-chairman of the 1984 Nile Valley Conference at Morehouse College, Atlanta, and coordinator of the Kumbalamba, USA, the first African Senegalese healing ceremony ever held on U.S. shores at St. Helena Island, South Carolina. The work that Bra Finch is working on at present is something called the Star of Deep Beginnings, the genesis of African science and technology, which is coming out in book form in September in Kenti Inc. publications, which Bra Finch also chairs. The importance of this Star of Deep Beginnings is in terms also of the term coming from the Dogon, Potolo, in which Po means seed and Tolo means star. So it's a question of a deep star of beginning in terms of science that Charles Finch would like to take us on in terms of our transformation, not only in terms of Africanness, but the root of science within us and how we take it forward into the next century and beyond from our star of deep beginnings. A warm welcome to Dr. Charles Finch. Could we check the mic for Dr. Finch?
No, still not. Okay, is that better? Great.
We're in deep beginnings now.
Nangadef, c'est magnifique. It is absolutely extraordinary to be back in the African community of the British Isles again. I come here quite often, as some of you know. And in particular, to participate in a symposium dedicated to my adopted mother, Mam Aji Fatou Sek. Mam Aji Fatou Sek is a 110-year-old healer from Senegal who has been working in the healing work for 70 years and has been known to heal somewhere between 20 and 25,000 people without one single failure. She is perhaps one of the most powerful spiritual personalities in the world, and certainly the most powerful spiritual personality in my life. Several people who have been to Senegal with me, who are here in this audience, and who came to Kumbalamba, USA in South Carolina, met her. She is of the Lebu people, a coastal fisher people in Senegal, about 15 miles south of Dakar. Actually, they are in Dakar and about 20 miles, 25 miles south, among the original people of Senegal who could trace their origins back to Libya. Libya takes its name from those people, the Lebu people. They were also the lion people because Lebu in ancient Egyptian means lion. And lion is a symbol of Senegal today. In their cosmic system, there are powers, cosmic spiritual powers called Rabs. In ancient Kemet, they were known as Neter. Among the Dogon, they are known as Nomo. Among the Benenois, they are known as Vodou. Among the Yoruba, they are known as Odisha. Among the Serer, they are known as Pangol. Among Native Americans, so-called Indians, they are known as Wakan. And the supreme power among these Rabs is Kumbalamba. Mam Kumbalamba Ndoye. She is the great mother of the waters, and she is the chief of all these spirits. Because her time is now. We heard somebody mention the age of Aquarius. Aquarius, at its root, is basically the great mother of the waters, who Kumbalamba is. Some know her as Mami Wata. Some know her as Yemanya. Some know her as Hathor Nut Isis. They are one and the same. And so I wish to pay homage to Mam Kumbalamba Ndoye, who is my Ra, before we begin our deliberations today. I greet Mam Kumbalamba Ndoye, my mother, mother of us all, manifestation of the one from whom all blessings and protections flow. We thank you, Mam Kumba, for another day. We thank you for the blessings and protections that have flowed our way to our children and to our families. We greet the Rabs, Mamba Sambandoy, Ma Tulifai, Njare, Nakdawa Mbai, Mam Gwesu, and Mbasi, and thank them for their assistance and protection, and thank them for having allowed us to do Kumbalamba USA. And for that I say, Amen. You see, we have talked about ancestors here today. Ancestors are not abstractions. They are not figments of the imagination. They are real. They are realer than you and I, and they are here right now. They do not wish you to talk about them. They want you to talk to them. If there is anything that an ancestor cannot tolerate, is to be forgotten, is to be ignored. So we must not only, as we have been doing, understand that they are here among us, feeding us with their words, feeding us with their wisdoms, feeding us with their spirit. Because when you have cleared everything away, the only thing is left is spirit. And the most powerful manifestation of that spirit in this age that is coming is the spirit of the great mother of the waters. She doesn't like what's been done to her for the last 2,000 years. She doesn't like it one bit. And she is calling all of us back to her, where we belong. You have two choices. You hear the call and respond, or you die. It's that simple. This is serious business that we're doing here today. This is not merely to make us feel good. It is not merely to glorify us. It is not merely to titillate our senses. It is about to embark on the process of transformation. Life itself is transformation. It is becoming. It is, by definition, transformation. And we are going to talk about transformation in terms of the meeting of worlds in the process by which we engage in this path that leads us to transformation. You see, in the African concept, there are two stages of the life when you are closest to spirit. One is at the beginning of life, at childhood, and one is at the end. This is why, in the African concept, grandfather and grandson, grandmother and granddaughter are not grandmother and granddaughter, they are brother and sister. Because they are the ones closest to the spirit from which everything comes. And so they talk to each other as brother and sister. And so when we start talking about the black child, it is because the black child has inaugurated the process, the path that will lead them through that transformative process, that becoming process that will allow them to find the destiny that each one of us has. In this time that we're going to spend together, we're going to look at some symbols of transformation. To understand transformation in many different ways without being able to exhaust everything that we can possibly understand about transformation from the African context. Because for us, it is the one context that has the possibility of setting us free. Sheikh Anta Diop used to say that if you have lost your historical memory, it means that you are subjected, you are victimized by a kind of collective amnesia. You are subjected to fits of depersonalization, alienation, uncertainty, and that is an acceptable definition of a collective mental illness. You cannot possibly make any progress toward the future unless you have recovered that historical memory. Unless that happens first, anything that you are trying to do is absolutely for naught. It is useless. Only those people who have a sense of their history know what they are capable of. And the first process before you can begin to move on that collective path of destiny is to recapture that lost and stolen and betrayed historical memory. You got to do it. If you don't do it, your entire life is meaningless and you cannot possibly face the future with confidence. And so therefore, if you will, the first step in the transformative process is recapturing that lost memory. It is going to be a visual odyssey that we go on as we look at these symbols of transformation and what they mean to us individually and collectively. I'm going to say something about what we call African science, if you like, African deep thought, African Sodai clear word. Science, at the root, simply means to know. That's all it ever meant, was to know. And most people have no sense, or have very little sense, that Africans had a science as we understand the term. Perhaps even so, the way in which science has become understood in the modern framework, it is perhaps a limiting concept. But let's use it, at least in a temporary sort of fashion, because it has four different aspects. There is the empirical aspect. This is a cubit measure made out of black granite from ancient Kemet. There were 4 cubit measures, each of them subdivided, as you can see here, into the various subdivisions of the cubit. But it's very interesting what they did with this cubit measure of black granite. They made it into a very precise length, what is today 20.62 inches long. And they put it in a place that never varied by more than 1 degree centigrade. Why? Because they knew that changes in temperature will cause wood, metal, and stone to expand or contract. This was the unit of measure used for all sacred buildings. And in the history of the world, there has never been any people anywhere in the world more obsessed with precision and exactitude than the people of ancient Kemet. They went to extraordinary lengths to measure things with as precise exactitude as they could possibly manage. In fact, the cubit measure became, therefore, the symbol of everything that was right, correct, and exact on the empirical plane or scientific plane, but also symbolically on the moral and spiritual plane. In a sense, it became one of the images of Ma'at, that which was right, correct, and exact. So you can begin to see that their knowledge functioned on several interlocking levels, and you got to know all of them. This is only one aspect of it. This is the empirical level, the scientific level, if you like, in the way we understand science. That's just one. Their science was also cosmic. The first people to systematically study and observe the stars and record them go back to Africa minimally 50,000 years ago. Because we know they had discovered the great year then, and we'll talk about that later. The people called the Dogon have described the beginnings of the origins of the universe and the creation of island universes that exist in spirals, that are spiral galaxies that exist in an innumerable profusion throughout the cosmos. And they connect their science, their knowledge, to that cosmic reality. So African science is also cosmic. It is also spiritual. We've already, it has been said once, and we could say it again and again. Without that spiritual connection, it is a science that is empty, devoid of meaning. This is taken from a prayer scene at Kumbalamba, USA, which we will see at the end of this discussion. Can I have the next slide, please? And you can turn up the lights. And it was symbolic. And we will look at the way in which this particular symbol, the watchet, the left eye of Horus, represented in 63/64, had a mathematical relationship, but also a symbolic and healing relationship. Let's say this about healing right now, because we're going to talk a lot about healing before we're finished, particularly African healing. I am a physician, so I understand something about the relationship between healing and curing. What modern medicine does and has done with very great success is perfect a curative paradigm. Curing is that method by which you relieve physical distress, and has been very successful at doing that. Healing is something else. There are 5 to 7 levels of forces that impact human life. There is the biophysical, there is the emotional, there is the psychic, there is the spiritual, there is the natural, and there is the cosmic. Healing addresses itself to the rebalancing of all those forces that impact human life. So healing is about rebalancing. It is about reharmonization. And also because the process of healing takes you through a process of symbolic life, birth, life, death, and rebirth, it is also, healing by definition is transformative. Let's talk about some other symbols of transformation. This is the crown of Tutankhamun. And notice the double uraeus symbol that comes up the back and comes up the spine. In the Hindu system, it is the Kundalini. It is the spirit power, the serpent power, that literally is raised up through the spine, through spiritual exercises, through exercises in character, that in the Pharaoh reaches its highest potential as an image of the divine man. And you see these two sinuating serpents in a double helix, representing the sagittal suture of the top of the skull, dividing and yet unifying the left side and the right side of the brain. So it is unity and multiplicity, division and unity and division, which, as the raised serpents, also represents the power that is raised in the process of spiritual exercises that is imaged as the raised serpent. And it also gives you the power of transformation, the power of creation. Because in the ancient Kemetic system, one of their images of creation was the serpent that came up out of the void, like the raised cobra, as you see here. And the duality represents the act of creation, but because before creation there was only one. And in order for creation, the one to know itself, it created two. And so division and bi-unity is itself creation, the process by which the universe becomes manifest. Connected in this way of a double helix to show the essential unity in duality and the duality in unity. All this in a simple and yet profound symbol which shows you again the process of transformation. Transformation is nothing more than what creation is. Now, you look at, on the left-hand side again is the human skull. On the right-hand side is an image of the scarab. The scarab or the dung beetle from ancient Kemet. Actually, you find the scarab beetle throughout Africa. What is the relationship between the two? The scarab beetle in the ancient Kemetic system used to create a perfectly spherical ball of dung, deposit its eggs in that ball of dung, roll it along the Nile, dig a hole, deposit all of the entire ball of dung into a hole, cover it over, and 4 months later, after the Nile floods had receded, the eggs that had been incubating inside that ball of dung literally flew up out of the muck and the mire into the open air. And so the scarab became an image of that which created itself. It became an image of transformation. In fact, Khepera, which was the name of the scarab, meant several things. It meant becoming, it meant transformation, and it meant evolution. Now, it corresponded to the skull, or the top of the skull, because you see, anatomically, the seat of divinity in man is the cranium, the cerebral part of the cranium, which is that part of the human brain that creates necessary transformation, which transformation occurs. It is that part of the human brain which is the crown of humanity, the divinity of humanity. And so this process of transformation, of self-creation, connects the image of transformation to the skull itself, to the brain itself. So you begin to see a few things. You begin to see symbolic imagery, but it's also related to the anatomy and the sense of science, the sense of understanding of what the anatomy of the human body is all about, that it itself is an image of the universe itself. It is an image of divinity. And the temple is indeed the higher centers of the brain, which are part of the centers which engage in the process of transformation. Interestingly enough, it has a different, another different aspect to it. It's simply this. When you look at European science, the history of European science 150 years ago, that is when you found the beginnings of the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution, interestingly enough, was propounded first by Darwin and then Alfred Russel Wallace. Both of them started out and continued throughout their entire lives as being avid collectors of beetles. So the beetle, the scarab, an image of evolution and transformation, became, you might say, symbolic of the process that led scientifically to the theory of evolution. You see, important ideas that affect the world do not just appear overnight. They are, you might say, recorded. They are prefigured in the symbols of transformation that occur at all times. Next slide, please. The reason, and you see the beetle is an extraordinary insect because it is absolutely essential for the ecology of many different environments. In the way in which it transforms dung into soil, aerating the soil so plants can grow and so other animals can eat the plants. Sometimes that depends on the existence of beetles in the environment itself. So the transformational process is something that actually occurs in nature also. What am I trying to drive home to you? You see, all these things are interdigitated. This process of transformation, this process of becoming, you see it in science. You see it in spirituality. You see it in symbolism. You see it in nature. You see it in the cosmos. All these things are connected and geared up together in a continuous, seamless, cyclical movement of life itself. And it is through African science symbol that you can read the book of life. Another transformative process. This is a human image of Thoth or Jehuti. Note what is in his left hand. It is a staff with a snake twined around it. He is one of the earliest deities of medicine, the gods of medicine. And if you go to a hospital or a clinic, you will find that same symbol as a modern symbol of medicine, the staff with a snake twined around it. Why? Because what does a snake do? A snake sheds old skin for new. It therefore is symbolic of the process of renewal and of transformation, which itself is what healing is all about. Healing is about renewal and transformation. So the snake itself became another ancient African image of renewal and transformation that comes down to us in an unbroken line of descent from Africa of 6,000 years ago. These symbols of transformation are very real. Next slide, please. Is why traditional Africa has a tremendous regard, a tremendous reverence for nature. Nature was humanity's first teacher. The book of nature and the book of the cosmos were the first books that humanity ever read. Now, this is a medicinal jar also from ancient Egypt. You see there the left eye of Horus. Horus was a sky god. His right eye was the sun, his left eye was the moon. The moon was said to control medicinal plants. And we have found in the modern day that the biochemical constituents of many different kinds of plants does depend on phases of the moon. And so the moon, as the left eye of Horus, was a celestial image of medicinal plants or drugs. And so it became one of the symbols of drugs, of medicines, and therefore of healing. And therefore, next slide, please, it becomes the source of that symbol there. So again, we don't even have, we barely have a sense of the ways in which ancient symbols from Africa still have a powerful impact on the modern world in ways that we don't even understand. They're so commonplace. The modern world still depends on ancient African symbolism. And you can't live without symbols because you can't speak without symbols. Words are signs and symbols. Symbols activate life. And they still have a tremendous power in ways that we only are dimly aware of. Let's now talk about the cosmos and the power of transformation that is written in the cosmos. The earth spins on its axis, just like a child's top. You spin it on its axis, the earth spins on it just exactly that way. But however, the earth is subjected to the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon. So it doesn't spin straight up and down, it spins tilted. Well, if you get a child's top, go home and get a child's top or your children's top or your grandchildren's top, spin it, and if it's not straight up and down, what it'll do, it'll wobble in a circle. So it'll be actually 2 circles, really 3, because it is spinning, it is revolving like the earth does around the sun, and it is wobbling. 3 circles in one. That wobble of the earth takes 26,000 years to complete. It is known as the so-called Great Year Precession of the Equinox. It was discovered in Africa minimally 40,000 years ago and probably 52,000 years ago. And what they did in the heavens, they took that circle, divided it up into 12 arcs, created 12 constellations. Actually, they got 2 circles. We'll come to the second one in a minute. Gave them names, histories, and symbols, and it took 26,000 years divided by 12. It takes 2,160 years to go through each arc, each symbol, each sign. The one that we're in now and that we're moving out of is the sign of Pisces. That's the original zodiac. And we are moving now into the sign of Aquarius, the great mother of the waters. This has all been worked out 40,000 years ago. And that's the zodiacal sign around the equator. But there's another one. There are 2 years of 26,000 years. There's one around the North Pole. Because it's the axis. You see the axis. It's moving around the North Pole, but there are 7 constellations in that one, in that circle. So there are 2 circles that they created. 2 movements that themselves were connected to historical forces. Pisces, the age of Pisces began 68 BC. Pisces is what? 2 what? Fishes. What started about 2,000 years ago? The religion of the fishes, of the 2 fishes. So-called Christianity. The Dogon have exactly the same Piscean system. So do the Lebu. What Christianity did, you know what they did? And this is their problem. They took the mother out of those systems. And that was the worst thing they could have possibly done. Because when you look at the great mother of the water throughout Africa, she's always associated with the fish. She was the original Piscean avatar with her son, whether it was Horus or Jesus the Christ. And let me tell you, every last one of them was trained in the Egyptian temple. Jesus was, Mary Magdalene was, she wasn't a harlot. Mary Magdalene wasn't a harlot. She was one of Jesus' most important apostles, and so was St. Peter. St. Peter lived for 300 years. And you know what? They are talking to us right now. You got to understand something about these powers. They are not limited by time or space. They live in something else that transcends the world that we understand. And they are talking to us right now. And if you want you and yours to be here for the next age, you better listen. Particularly the women. You know why? Because there's no woman alive who doesn't have the power. Doesn't have, you may suppress it, deny it, ignore it. But it doesn't mean that you ain't got it. And they're trying to talk to you. The oracle priestesses. Because it's the great mother whose time is coming back. And she is gathering all her children together. This is a feminine universe anyway. Mostly. of this is in the temple of, on the Zodiac of Dendra, the Zodiac of Dendra, which of course is made, the original is in Louvre in France. But all of these cycles of time, the calendar of 365 days, the cycles of 1,460 years, and the cycle of 26,000 years are inscribed on the temple of, and both circles, the one around the equator and also one around celestial north, are inscribed in the temple of Dendra, sacred to Hathor Isis. Next slide, please. This just shows you diagrammatically how it happens from the point of view of the movements of the earth. What happens if you stood at noon time in fact, we're right now in it. The equinox, the spring equinox right now, last 2 days. If you could stand like today for the next 2,160 years at noon, not at noon, at dawn, a Pisces is getting ready to go down. You would see Aquarius, and gradually, at the end of that 2,160 years, Aquarius would not rise at dawn. Capricorn, so-called Capricorn, would follow Aquarius. And again, it's a function of those movements. And that's the reason why we say we are in the age of Aquarius, because she will be rising at dawn in less than 100 years. And Pisces is getting ready to sink beneath the horizon. And this is why the great mother of the waters is showing herself. It's her time. And there's nothing nobody can do about that. That's a cosmic event that dictates human history. Everything is connected to everything else in the universe. The universe is a fabric. We'll come back to that in a minute, too. Next slide, please. Let's move past this. Now, even though this is a Eurocentric-looking depiction, I want to bring something else to your attention. This is the northern zodiac. What you may not be able to appreciate, what is happening now, we're in the middle of a 26,000-year cycle. So this is a very powerful time. You know why? Because both cycles are changing virtually at the same time. The northern zodiac, right now, Polaris, the North Pole star, is in Little Bear. Little Bear originally was the jackal, or Anubis. This is the reason why you find the pale fox among the Dogon. It is the reason why you find the coyote among Native Americans. It is even why Romulus and Remus were suckled by a she-wolf. Because those symbols, that symbol was the original symbol. Even Little Bear is called Sinusaurus. That's the dog who sees by night. But the pole star is getting ready to change. So the northern polar ruler was the jackal, wolf, dog, or fox. But that's going to change in less than 100 years. And you know who's coming in to that position? Cepheus. You know who Cepheus is? Cepheus is the black Ethiopian king. Now you wonder why the Million Man March happened when it happened. These things don't happen, nothing happens at random. Nothing just happens. They are written in the book of heaven if you know how to read it. Cepheus, the black Ethiopian, will be the ruler of the northern heaven for 3,700 years with his Ethiopian wife Cassiopeia and his equally Ethiopian daughter Andromeda. Look at the stars. Watch the heavens. Hale-Bopp, the comet, is a messenger. And you can see him, messengers are always male, in the northwestern heaven at 6 o'clock in the evening. We're in the midst of a change of age. In the midst of a transformation that's affecting everybody, whether you want to be affected or not. You don't have anything to do with it. You either flow with it or you drown. That's why I can't worry about too much of what's going on. I can't worry about I can't worry about the Europeans' New World Order. I can't worry about his 5 tribes because there's going to be a New World Order, but it ain't going to look anything like what they think it's going to look like. I'm just telling you, accept it or reject it, take it or leave it alone. My name is Cassandra. I say these things and nobody's going to believe me, but that's not my problem. My problem is to bring it here on the table for you. It doesn't mean that I have more, I can see more. I'm just looking at the signs and understanding what they mean. I know the book. I spent 27 years learning to read the book with a lot of help from my elders, like Mom Aji Fatusek. You know, I gave her homage like an ancestor. She's still alive, but as someone says, she's practically a Rob herself. Next slide, please. Let's talk about these people. Along the Bandiagara cliffs of what is now modern-day Mali. Went there, started their migrations out of the Nile Valley about 1,400 years ago. Ended up about 700 years in the Bandiagara cliffs in the most inhospitable part of Mali, specifically so they would be left alone to maintain, preserve, and keep their ancient traditions of which that had been entrusted to them when they migrated out of the Nile Valley. There are now Senegalese oral traditions that record 6 migrations from 600 BC to 600 AD out of the Nile Valley into Western Africa. 6 of them, giving rise to the 12 to 15 major ethnic groups that we find there. Dogon, Serer, Bambara, Yoruba, Benin, Ashanti, Ewe, all the major ethnic groups can trace themselves back to the Nile Valley because they were sent out because the Nile Valley, Kemet, was under attack. Not just once, but waves of them over a period of 1,000 years, and the Dogon were the last to go. It is the reason why people of African descent in the diaspora have a direct connection to the Nile Valley. That is something, that's not a figment of our imagination, you know. That is blood. And blood is the medium, blood is thick, it tells. Let's spend some time with these Dogons. I think I'm probably like my elder Asa, I'm probably running out of time already. Let's have the next slide. These are the 4 elders who gave this information to Marcel Griot. One of them is a woman. People get hung up on that. Why they tell these white people? It isn't your concern. Don't get worried about Malidoma Some spending time among the stranger enemy. That's what he was told to do. This was their best avenue to get this knowledge out to do what? They knew that their people were on the brink of the abyss, and it required extraordinary measures to pull them back. And so they had to reveal things that they had never revealed to the world at large. And it isn't just the Dogon either. I'm finding it with my mom, Aji Fatusek, Eric Badosu from Dahomey, one of the descendants from the last kings of Dahomey is doing the same thing. Why? Because we are teetering on the brink of the abyss. And it's going to take extraordinary measures to pull us back, even at the risk of violating sacred secrets. Now, next slide, please. This just shows you, we'll do these very quickly, shows you the places where these Western Sudanic people, which virtually all the people in the diaspora came from Canada all the way down to Argentina and the Caribbean and everywhere. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What do they know? More of a question is, what do they don't know? The star system's serious. But most important part of their star system, of their star knowledge, has to do not with Sirius A, which they call Sigitolo, but Sirius B, Potolo. It means seed star, or star of deep beginnings. What is this Sigitolo, or what is this Potolo? What is this Sirius B? It is a white dwarf. They call it a white seed. It incredibly dense and heavy, which they describe, and it's so dense and heavy that it affects the orbit of Sirius A, around which it moves every 50 years. Not only that, you got to understand something about how you get to a white dwarf or a white sweep. You take our sun, SUN, at the end of its life, it starts expanding into a red giant about 10 times its normal size. Then it gets so big that it can no longer support its mass, and so it explodes in a nova or supernova explosion, usually a nova, and it can only do that when it's with a companion. And then it condenses down, a sun-sized star condenses down to the size of Earth. And so 1 teaspoon weighs 1 ton and becomes extraordinarily dense and heavy with what they call degenerate matter. And therefore becomes a white dwarf. You got to understand, the Dogon have been describing this white dwarf for 700 years. It wasn't even confirmed by astronomical observation until 1862. And they didn't know it was a white dwarf until 1913. And the Dogon have known this for at least 700 years. And they even describe the supernova explosion that creates white dwarfs without a telescope. We don't even know whether they have a written language or not. This is the reason why Kenneth Brecher of Massachusetts Institute of Technology said they have no business knowing any of this. Dogon aren't finished. They say, you see, most star systems are not single stars like our sun. They're either binary or trinary star systems. They say there's a third star out there called her Emiya Tola, the little son of women. All this without a telescope. You know, you can't even see Sirius B most of the time, Potolo, even with a telescope. Most of the time you have to infer its existence there because of the changes in the orbit or the disturbance in the orbit of Sirius A, which is the brightest star in the heavens outside the solar system. On a clear night, you better do it soon because in April it's going to go down below the horizon. In the southern heaven, you can see Sirius A with Orion, its companion. Next slide. Next slide. You saw the fox. This is the axis of the world that turns under the paws of the fox. That's one of the reasons among several dozen I could cite that you know that this is an ancient Kemetic system, because in the dendra, the zodiac of Dendra, it is the jackal that turns the axis of the world. And the Dogon say exactly the same thing. You know what else the Dogon say? They say that the pole isn't just a star. It's a seed. It's also this image of the origin of the creation of matter. And that matter is made up of grains which spin like celestial particles. They basically have an atomic theory of matter. You know what else they say? They say at the beginning of creation, everything was concentrated in this incredibly small pole, which burst and sent its grains out into the universe, and that's when creation started. Any physicists in the room ever heard of the Big Bang theory? That is the theory in modern physics that is supposed to describe the origin of the universe, and the Dogon already have it in their system for 700 to 1,400 years. Someone said, how do they know all of this? Clearly, there are other ways of knowing. Clearly, you see, it isn't just spiritual knowledge or psychic knowledge. It is that too, but their knowledge, their sensitive knowledge gives them very concrete, very developed, very advanced, empirical, verifiable, scientific knowledge that compares with the best of modern physics. And I always tell my black students, young black students, how many physicists are in the room here? I can't even talk about mathematics. Do you know that the ancient Egyptians had learned to find an area under a curve? You say, okay, Finch, so what? That's the first step toward integral calculus. So I say, here we gave science, we gave mathematics and physics to the world, and I might go throughout this entire room and have a hard time finding someone who is a physicist or a mathematician. As Asa said, not John D. Jackson, Chancellor Williams said, if people of African descent want to know how far they have fallen on the scale of human endeavor, all you have to do is go stand in the hypostyle hall of Karnak Temple for 5 minutes. All you have to do is contemplate this reality that science, as we understand it, mathematics and physics, comes out of the African world, and when you look at it today, none of us are in it. It is something that has been given to us, so we think, by somebody from outside Africa. It's an index of the profound alienation, the profound ignorance, which was deliberate, and that we cultivate ourselves. We cultivate this ignorance. Here we have a people in southwestern Mali who have a Big Bang theory for the creation of the universe, describe an atomic theory of matter. You know what they even say? They say that the universe is curved. You know who revolutionized physics with that? Einstein. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is a Dogon conception of nova or supernova. Next slide, because there's some other things I want to get to. I'm not going to get to. Okay, let's look at this. I'm going to read from the Pale Fox. Watch this carefully and listen carefully. This is the Dogon. It is said, the Nomo Anagono is the first living thing created by Ama, the creator. The word for catfish, anagono, breaks down to ana, which means rain, and gono, which means to sinuate. Ana also designates man, whose seed on the mythical plane is associated with the fertilizing rain and fresh water. The term ana foretells that the living being created will become man. It is said, the Nomo Anagono that Ama created inside the Po, Ama who created the Po, has made the image of the Nomo Anagono, i.e., divine man, inside. The gestation of the Nomo Anagono took place slowly inside Ama's womb. Of the 66 yala of the central spiral, the yala are the marks of infinite potentiality. The marks of infinite potentiality. Of the 66 yala of the central spiral, Ama kept 22, those of the Po, and bestowed the remaining 44 upon the Nomo Anagono. Now these final 8 yala prefigure the 4 body souls and the 4 sex souls of the being in formation. The creation of the Nomo Silurus prefigures the creation of man, who also begins with fire, for semen is fire in the womb. This penetration of the 4 fundamental elements took place during the development of the principal organs of the Nomo Anagono inside the egg. To emphasize their respective roles, one compares the yala of Ama's eggs with those of the egg of Nomo Anagono by saying, the yala of Ama's egg is like an egg with its yolk and its germ. The yala of the Nomo Anagono caused the elongation, enlargement, growth of the world. In fact, the formed being will be complete and alive. That's a description of embryology, what happens embryologically. But let's go back. Of the 66 yala of the central spiral, Ama kept 22, those of the Po, and bestowed the remaining 44 upon the Nomo Anagono. Let's go to the scientific literature, so-called. An autosome. An autosome is any ordinary pair chromosome as distinguished from a sex chromosome. In man, there are 44 total autosomes. Now, these final 8 yala prefigure here the 4 body souls and the 4 sex souls of the being in formation, the essentials of genetics. Although there are 4 sperm produced from the original cell, the sperm are only of 2 kinds in terms of their chromosomal content. The 2 positions possible through the random alignment of 2 pairs of chromosomes will produce 4 different kinds of sperm of sex cells. Now, I hope you grasp some little bit of what I just said. Look at that figure there, get it, burn it in your brain. Now give me the next slide. Can you go back Can you flip back and forth? I don't want you to miss the significance of this. Now go forward. One other thing, if I can get to it quickly. Okay, listen to this. Keep your eye on that. Descent of the ark. Amma then made his ark come out of his womb and descend on the earth, filled with everything he had created. It came out through the opening he had left in the sky for the emergence of the sun, which was pushed to the west by Amma. One says that the ark swung in the sky for 8 periods during its descent. While the ark was swinging to and fro, the fact that it was suspended from a chain made its pivot on its axis back and forth. In this way, the line of its descent made a double helix, reproducing the very movement of life of the whirlwind that quickened the first seed. This movement was maintained by the breath of the ancestors as if passed through a nozzle. This nozzle is shaped just like this whirling respiration called the spinning wind, which gave force to the helix of descent. It reproduced a double helix, reproducing the very movement of life. That's what the Dogons say. Now, let's go to the human genetics, code of life. DNA regulates the biochemistry of individual cells and constitutes what is transmitted through inheritance. DNA has been recognized as carrying the genetic code for all life. DNA is now known to consist of a double helix. Next slide, please. I think we'll finish up here in the next couple of minutes. Next slide. Let's just see if there's anything I want to capture before. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. I'll leave all this out. Keep going. Keep going. I didn't even get to Asa. I didn't even get him. We're going to do quickly Kumbalamba, USA, Mam Fatu Sek, and the healing ceremony there, which brought 2 worlds together. 3 worlds in a sense, but 2 worlds, African, African-American, and Indian. So we'll do this in the last 5 minutes. Next, this is the dawn scene of drummers. Next slide, please. Quickly, we'll try to finish up in 5 minutes. We had dancers both from Brooklyn, New York, and also from Senegal, as well as drummers. Next slide. This is the sacrifice. We don't even have time to talk about sacrifice. I don't know if you recognize the person sitting on that bull, but nonetheless. Next slide, please. Can we turn the lights down a little bit? This is in Dipcot. Can we get the lights? Yeah, good. This is in Dipcot, one of the priestesses, Fatu Sek's niece. Next slide, please. This Fatu Sek, Mam Fatu Sek, last August. Next slide, please. This is the dance leader, Zainabu Jang. Next slide, please. Dance, drumming, music. You may not recognize those feet, but some people will. Next slide, please. This is the griot. And healing is about transformation. This was in South Carolina. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are some of the participants. This is John Ume from Nigeria showing us the Afa Oracle. Next slide, please. This is the hoop of 100, sacred hoop of 100 eagle feathers from Native Americans. They gathered 100 eagle feathers in which 350 people prayed over the eagle feathers. Next slide, please. Next slide, quickly. Raven fire, 96-hour sacred fire, the Tlingit from Alaska. Again, this is 2 worlds coming together for the first time in 500 years. Next slide, please. Gray Wolf, a medicine man from Alaska who has healed breast cancer. Next slide, please. This is Inez Perse, Horace Axtell. What he's looking at, there were 2 eagles that flew up. And one of them, I don't know if you know about Native American history, but one of those 2 eagles were Sitting Bull and his nephew, Watanka Wanili, who came to this ceremony as spirits in the form of eagles. You don't see the eagles, but that's what he's raising his hand to. Next slide, please. Keep going. Keep going. Just showing you some scenes from Kumbalamba, USA. African and Indian, this is Mary Jones, Choctaw Indian medicine woman. African and Indian coming together and sharing knowledge for the first time. Next slide, please. Fatu Sek, you can't see her, but that's her. Keep going. That's the end. Your life is about transformation. It's a necessary transformation. The powers and the spirits of the African world are calling you home. You have two responses and two choices to make, but only one leads toward life. Thank you very much.
Points of the light.